Alright, these are the mods we'll be using. No standard, almost all bobs, angels, and these alien biomes. Oh, maybe you want to be interested. We're playing on 17.66. I'm gonna go over the uranium recipe. So we got this recipe to craft uranium ore. You can get uranium from here, here. From gambling, very inconsistent. And this is the main recipe in the sorting. Right, so the end result is this. Now out here I'm just processing the ore. You can use production modules, quite nice. But basically you need these ingredients. So sapphirite, chromitium, bobmonium, and the crystal catalyst. So this looks like quite, you know, how do you say, compact or neat, simple, but it's not really, because all of this is required. Well, maybe not this, but all of this. Well, some of this, you know, this is just for scaling, but yeah, all this helper factory is required just to power, you know, this for example, this wastewater doesn't really say, but basically you get this thing, chloric wastewater. You don't really use it for anything, so it goes straight into the void. But you begin with the, you know, I just neatly, you know, I found a spot. For some reason they neatly spawned together. You know, I just mine the ores. Nothing fancy. This ore mines slowly because, see, mining time to 50%. You know, compare my, you know, bobmonium 5.6 reserves to one miner on sapphirite, which was mined full 557k over 6 iron steel chests, sorry. And then same with chromitium, it mines slowly. I mine it directly into this chest, request chest. No, passive provider, sorry. Fully productionized, and I'm sitting at, where is it? At 9, I guess. Mining productivity 9. Research. So this is a super late game setup. I just went through to see how the end result would look like, but basically you crush the ores. Now you bring them in. But how my conditions set up, like if there's no ore in the chest, you know, you just send the circuit signal and then train goes off, or if the train is full. I can't use full because I'm using two cars with two different products. So if you just use the default condition full, you'll never get it because it will be half full. So you need to check for cargo. But that's just that. Oh, whatever. We're running out a bit on Bob. Well, 32k in storage. Oh, I guess that's not really running out. But yeah, you end up with a crushed stone. Where is it? No. Ah, Well, I'm using all the stone there, whatever. So you crush the ores, then you float them in a flotation cell. You know, you end up with the waste. You gotta be careful because these first three ores, like saphirite, steatite, and bobonium, when you float them, they create the same waste. But these guys, givelite, chronitium, they create their own waste, so you gotta be careful about not mixing the pipes. I use this setup just so I can, you know, direct insert. Otherwise I would need to make space for new pipes. And then I have the leaching plant. You know, and they also, these three ores use the same gas, which is sulfuric acid. Or just fluid, I guess. But this guy uses hydrochloric, which is not a complicated recipe, but just be aware, you know. Then we bring them all together. All again with direct insert method. Right. So the ores would look like quite simple, but you need to have purified water as an input, pipe input, and the acidus pipe input, and this thing hydrochloric acid as an input. So yeah, so that's where the easy part ends, I guess, because to make the, well, to get rid of the sulfuric waste, it's quite useful gas, or liquid I suppose. Let's see, it goes into, oh, I lost it here, into this plant. So I just use this standard recipe to make the acid component and to well, mineralized water and purified water. So basically comes out purified water and mineralized, like because you are creating purified water, you don't want this factory to stall, factory, whatever, building, because if it, you know, if you overfill the pipe with purified water, it will have nowhere to go. So I use a top-up valve made from here somewhere. Under here? No, here. No. Oh, barrelers. Yeah, barreling. I guess it's like one of these mods. Chemical processing. There's other mods that add these type of valves, but basically, yeah, you have this top-up valve that checks this pipe, you know, directly next to it, or even if it in itself, no, directly next to it, you know, according to the arrow, you see, it has a little arrow where it checks. So if this pipe drop below 80, it will start to send the manufactured water. And the way I manufacture purified water is this saline water recipe. Water purification, I take just water and I end up with saline water. Saline water I reuse, I store here. If it gets too much, you know, I read the storage bin contents, this small inline tank. I could even use the bobs, this even smaller storage tank, just so I can know the value pressure I'm sitting on. Basically, I think this process generates more than enough saline water for this process. You know, you end up using the salination plant, which creates saline water directly. And it's just linked to a pump somewhere here. Yeah. So this setup you need to, you know, create near a water source that's kind of close by. But I think basically, yeah, this one rarely if ever gets used. You know, if this tank drops below, I start to pump it. But if it goes above, I pump it to the void. Just gets rid of it. And there's also a thing, you know, like this liquid doesn't have a void recipe, so I added it. And I'm gonna show it later. But yeah, so that's how you get rid of saline water. The purified water is what we actually need. Now, yeah, you can get rid of unwanted liquids most of the time in the clarifier. It's somewhere here. Yeah, under water treatment in Angel's refining mod. Right, so the next gas is... Oh, well, maybe I'll complete the loop of the acid. So basically we take the acid component, which is this sulfur chunk. Oh, it doesn't say anything more. Okay. So basically you need like some kind of... Let's see if I can find it. Is it here? So you're using this recipe and you need one of these buildings. I'm using the Bob's chemical plant. Because out of all of these, it has, when it's in the final tier, it has the fastest recipe time. But you can use any of these buildings, either Angel's chemical plant. This is FNA mod. Like find out my function or something other it's called. Yeah, this building is quite large, you know, like a refinery 3x3 or no 5x5. This thing is 3x3. I just use it because it reminds of vanilla. Yeah, so basically you use one of these chemical plants, you create the oxide gas, and I found that you need quite a lot of oxygen for it. Oxygen is quite straightforward. You just use a flare stack to get rid of the nitrogen, and then you get 50 oxygen from 100 compressed air. So I'm using like raw speed module and green modules everywhere basically, but all the remaining slots run the speed module or productivity like here. But basically, yeah, you use a air filter to get compressed air. I think it only has like 2 recipes or 3. I haven't tested this alien spores thing yet. But yeah, it can create this thing, which is quite powerful. Because the sulfur gas or liquid or whatever, it's used in geolite processing. It's the only way to make it really. Now it's a very rare resource compared to others, like which are plentiful or infinite, or very easy, you know, to get in large quantities quickly. But yeah, I don't know what this pipe is all about. You pipe them in. I found out that you need a lot of these and quite a lot of oxygen. So we get rid of the nitrogen. We pump the oxygen here into this recipe, which has 3 modules for speed sitting here for now. You know, again, direct insert, and also I just grab any chunks that might be floating around anywhere, but also serves as a I think I created these chunks somewhere, but now I'm not creating them anymore. Yeah, so There's no real way to spawn them. Yeah, these are just the remainder sitting in this buffer. But anyway, we request from buffer chests. That's a side. Well, yeah, that's not part of the loop. Basically, you need to watch out because your system could stall if you run out of space to store these guys. So maybe convert this thing to this chest, logistics chest, and then either use buffer chests or this method to, because currently I'm not controlling, otherwise this whole system is more or less self-sustaining. It's only creating two products, this and the wooden brick here, which is accumulating. If it accumulates too much, I'm trying to get rid of it with the train here, but otherwise you would just well, put them into steam. Like I'm getting rid of them here, to generate the electricity back. But basically, yeah, so you make the gas, and then from this gas and purified water you make the actual acid. So again, another consumer on the purified water line. Where's this going? That's going there. Yeah, so that's how you get the acid. Oh, this is the old pipe. I'm not using it anymore. I was using, to get rid of this sodium hydroxide, had to modify the game files, because you have these recipes which are in a loop on itself. You have this thing, you have this thing. You can use acid and spend hydroxide, and then you put the sodium sulfide here, then you get back more of the chunk, and then you get rid of this somewhere. Oh. Treatment, no. Here. Sodium. One of these. I guess this one, yeah. This is the loop I was using, and then I end up with the hydroxide again. But it doesn't get rid of it, because the numbers are 1 to 1. You spend 5 of these sodium, I don't know, crystal shards to get back the oxide, and then you spend oxide, you get 1 to 1. You get 2 of those, you spend those 2 to get 4. And then, there's no loss here, there's no loss here. There's only gain, because you end up with 2 chunks. So, I had to go into game files. And by the way, this is the hydrochloric acid, which is quite straightforward. Now I pump it through here, all the way. So basically you end up using the saline water from here or from the generator, and water is infinite. So you have a little bit of balancing control. Then you end up with the sodium hydroxide from this recipe. So you spend the saline water, you end up with these 2 gases, then you combine them, but because they are not produced equally, see, you're producing 40 green gas and 60, let's see, hydrogen gas, and then they're out of balance, chlorine gas. So I store it up, and then I read its contents. If it's more than 1.5 thousand, I put out a flag. Then that flag gets multiplied by 1000, and I output it as a gas. And that way, this pump will work, you know, as long as we have more than 1.5k gas. But with this transformation, we end up with 2.5k. Yeah. And so the system will drop from 1.5 to 500, see? It goes down to all the way to 500. Mathematically speaking, we drop to 1.5k or 1.4k, and then this setup fails, the flag disappears, and then this extra amount also disappears, but we end up with, you know, instead of, you know, this pump activating all the time, like activating, stopping all the time like that, because this, you know, this gas influx is so little, just plus 20 gas every time. So I just wait until it accumulates and then get rid of it in bulk. And you can get rid of it in flare stack. Extra gas. But basically, yeah, you just use another of these chemical plants. If you're not sure, you can always just go here, find your gas with FNA, find your recipe, which would be this thing. You know, if you left click, you will find out how it's made. If you right click on anything like saline water, you will find out how it's, where it's used. Like this recipe uses it, this recipe. If you want to find out how it's made, you just left click it, and this back button is just that. Basically, yeah, I'm using this recipe, then I end up with this gas. Just scroll through until you find your recipe. I'm using this thing. So just right click it and you'll see where it's used. And then you see that you will end up with this acid, which is used in our desired recipe of, where is it? Oh right, the cornetium chunks floating. Or leaching, sorry. Yeah. And then you just take in the pure water. You make the acid and it's good to go. But it ends up with this side product, hydroxide. And the way to, let's see if I can, where is it? Hydroxide was somewhere here. Yeah, hydroxide has like a lot of uses, but I didn't find any appropriate recipe except for this one. But this fluid, as of current patch, didn't have a void recipe, so I added a void recipe like this. Because it, you know, you can, the basic idea is, you know, to get rid of anything, you don't have a, there are special mods to get rid of solids, like in pianodons. I know pianodons has a burner element, similar to a flare stack. But in pianodons, the vents are so slow, and the hole in the ground that you can use is also quite slow to get rid of fluids. So this one is very nice, just super fast. Basically, yeah, well, getting off track. This is the only useful recipe to get rid of sodium hydroxide. So, you know, it just takes pure water, the hydroxide, and then I just vent it out. And the way you do it, you know, from the, here are my mods directory, you know, like in Angel's Petrochem, if you extract it, you get something like this. And then you go to prototypes, petrochem generate. Right. Also, in the Angels refining mod, you use the function. He has defined the function for making fluid voids. You know, like this. So if he makes a recipe and then he injects the recipe into the data so that it's available in the game. And this is just that. So we take the void category and fluid name, and then we make well, we construct the recipe. Well, like local variables. I'm not sure how Lua works, but basically you just write it like here, and then it already has created that variable. I'm not sure. Strange. Because you define, you know, variables like this, but this one you just take out of context, but then you use it here. Recipe results. You basically take the ingredient fluid name, and then you get a result of a void, which is basically a non-item. And you have two values, either a chemical or a water void, you know, and then chemical is in the flare stack, water is in the clarifier. So basically you take this file in the petrochem mod, petroleum generate, under prototypes, you open it up. Also, if you go to items and under solids here, you have this sodium, one of the sodiums. Yeah, this is where your fluid is defined, that hydroxide. If you're not sure, you can open if it could be there. In under locales, you'll have the item names. Like this is how it looks in game, sodium hydroxide solution, and this is how its item name in the code is. So that's how you find out for sure that it's the right thing you're operating with. Right, so but this is just the properties. You just go back to petrochem generate. You use its code name, and I added this one extra function. We call the functions make void, which was defined in another mod. But when they're loaded, they're well, I went through the modding tutorial. You know, all these functions are available, all the mods, so they don't conflict with one another. If something conflicts, then you get an error, and you either can disable the broken mod or just go ahead and fix it. But basically, I added this line. We use the defined function, make voids. We give it a fluid name, our fluid, and we use water as the category. And then we have the clarifier water void for this element. And then you know just put the file back into the petrochem zip. In Windows you can just copy and paste it directly into it. It will replace it. And then you get this. Yeah, this recipe. And if you're not sure, you can always just, you know, check that it has a void recipe. If it doesn't, well, then it doesn't. Like for example, the slag slurry doesn't. Let's see if I can find it. Slag was here. Slurry doesn't have a void recipe. Oh no, it does. Oh, sorry, didn't notice that. Oh, okay. Whatever. But hydroxide didn't have void recipe before that, so where was I? So we can process all of these, the chunks. We can get rid of the waste, but waste also produces this mineralized water. See? And then, well, again, I store it up. 17,000. This guy. Why is it red? Oh, logistics. Right. I have it connected to the logistics network condition. But that's a different thing. I'm generating mineralized water for something else to get rid of the stone. But we haven't gotten there yet. So basically, we pump the mineralized water into here. And any excess water into the algae processing. So from algae you basically end up with the fuel. You know, you spend some of it, some of the algae to make algae, which is quite a well business thing to do. It's consistent with business, you know, because you spend money to make money, right? So basically you have these algae farms, and if you're not sure, you can always find it. Algae farm. You select craft, and then you find out what technology it needs. Oh, where it's made. Well, yeah, to unlock this farm, right? You need blue algae processing. Then you open your, you know, your research tree, and you find the blue algae processing where it sits on the research tree, and basically it only needs red and green science. And I'm not sure what it does. It just works faster, I suppose. Crafting speed 1, pollution. This one has crafting speed 1.5. Yeah, so it works a bit faster. And since this recipe, this one is 20 seconds, it's quite long. Now, then using the best, fastest methods of producing is, I'm not sure, can you use productivity modules? No, I can't. So just standard setup. I conserve energy whenever I can. That way, it functions like a pseudo productivity module, because you save the fuel which you make. But basically it's just a process to get rid of the mineralized water. I'm getting sidetracked. Yeah, so you need the gas and mineralized water to make it. You can start this system with coal. You just make the carbon dioxide like this, or maybe the easiest way is to make it from here. Oh no, but you spend fuel as well in the, what's it called, where is it? Blast furnace. If you process the limestone, you get the oxide as well. Where is it? Carbon dioxide, see? You can't really, it's too bad that it doesn't show the name of it. But basically that's the easiest way, I guess, to get because limestone is you get from washers, from water, or just use some coal to start the system, and then you will end up with algae. You know, press that algae into cellulose fiber, and then you can make a pellet from cellulose, or any cellulose. You can even use wood, you know, just to make the cellulose. Where is it? Somewhere here maybe. Yeah, you can use wood, and then you can use pellets to start the system, and once it started, it will feed itself. This setup is not ideal. I mean, I just put it together in haste, but you would end up with one source where to, with one assembler to make the pellets, and then the control mechanism. If the storage is good enough, you can either check the gas levels, or you can measure the pellet levels, or whichever you like. And then the excess you direct towards, see, I have a check here. If logistics network has more than enough cellulose, because cellulose, I'm saving it for this recipe. Where is it? Cellulose. You can make it into methanol gas, and then methanol gas you can make into, you can synthesize in the steam cracker into propene, and propene you can make into liquid plastic, and then you end up with the plastic bar. That's why I'm saving it for, but that's just an expansion. I would, instead of the bricks, I would load this cellulose into the train. But making the pellets, like, you can see that 2 pellets take 12 cellulose, so storing the pellets is more efficient storage wise than cellulose. You don't need as much storage space, but then again you would transform it into what's called, into plastic bars directly, so that's how you would compress, well, get rid of that problem. But basically, yeah, for now I'm just making it into pellets and then into these wooden bricks. And I had a lot of stone from the other process that we will go to over shortly, so I added a bit more. And the belt, the red belt is a bit too slow, so I ended up using the ultimate belt. But even the ultimate belt, it says 75 items per second. But I don't think it's fast enough, because you produce 40 items and direct inserting is faster. I mean, the assembler can handle it, just surround the farms. Oh, that's just an optimization. But yeah, so you end up with these, with more cellulose that you know what to do with. That's one end product that I haven't gotten quite rid of. But you just put these into the boilers, into electricity production, and then you can get rid of it that way. So the next step, so now we got the ores down. I think that is absolutely self-sufficient. If you deploy this setup right now, it doesn't need anything else. Let's see, quick check. Get rid of acid. And then you accumulate this chunk. That's how you make the acid. The acid needs oxygen. And this waste process produces mineralized water. We got rid of that. Saline water from purified water. We got rid of that. We incorporated into this process. And then Alright, these are no longer needed. This was just for... yeah, that's the cell line. Yeah, so I think ores are done. But then you also need this hybrid catalyst. So, you need a crystallizer. You need to make it, you can stick to productivity module. Alright. So, you need the mineral sludge and you need crystal seedling, which is a fuel. Fluid, I mean. You would think that it looks like a solid, but no. It's a fluid. Yeah, so you need filtration units. And then I think that's the only way, yeah. This is the only way to make them. There are a couple of variations. You can use thermal water, but you need to use this building. So you start with these fluids, then you have the well, I messed up and I ended up with inefficient refiltering. And all these recipes require these filters. Either you can use coal filter or ceramic filter. Ceramic filter is like fully reusable. If you're using coal filter, you end up consuming coal and there's no way to generate coal, so to speak. So, for example, the water is easy to generate, and this acid is easy to generate. You end up with more acid than the system uses, you know, from these processes of floating from the sulfuric waste water. And then here you just use the purified water to wash the spent filter, and you get the filter back. And to make the filter you just use a bit of iron. Where are they? Somewhere here. Not the lime filter, the other filter. I can never remember where they are. Here. Yeah, so you just use aluminum, and the filter frame was iron and steel. But basically, yeah, so this is just a recirculation item. Once you make it, it's all good to go as long as you can supply the water. And we already have enough of that. So you should direct insert, I think, is the best method. Or have equally long belts. Because otherwise all the filters will end up here, and then this building... Basically you need to manage a bit so that the filters are evenly distributed. If you add too much filters to it, the system will stop, because you know this guy will end up with too much either spent ceramic filters, or this guy will, you know, because, well, you know how it works. So yeah, so basically we use these two recipes. I ended up using the crystal slurry for both of them. You can use slag slurry to make this guy, to make the sludge. But I ended up just using the crystal slurry because in the flotation process we end up with the geode sometimes, it's 50%. So, and when you process the geodes, you end up with the stone, and you end up with this thing. So, and you need the crystal dust to make the crystal slurry, and then the slurry into seedling, and slurry into sludge, and then you basically end up with the desired product. So it takes in acid. We have plenty of acid, and the crystal dust, this is where it gets a bit interesting. You get it from water, it's renewable, or from the, you need to reprocess these geodes. So I bring them all the way to the water. Let's see, this is the requester chest. Just there. It turns out you don't need too many of these catalysts, or you can make them slowly enough to keep up with this whole system. Because I thought I would need a lot more, but it turns out, oh well. So you have that, you have acid input, and you just have a solid input. And the way you make it, I take it all the way from here. Yeah, so this setup, you will need a seafloor pump to pump the viscous mud water, and you'll need just plain water. So this is a reprocessing, but I run it through here. You also, again, you use the top up not to flood the system, because you start with this one in the washing plant. You take the mud from the seabed and you make the heavy mud. It has like 4 and 4 recipes. They correspond very well together. But basically you can take the heavy mud and you transform it into concentrated mud, and you end up with this solid mud sometimes. This mud. So yeah, you gotta get rid of it, or otherwise your production will stall. So here I direct insert it into a chemical plant, and I use this. I generate back the viscous mud water. That's the only use for mud, I think. Or maybe you can use the fertilizer with it. Let's see, mud. Yeah, you can have 13 recipes for it. Yeah, you use it in farming, swamp farming. You can use it here. But basically I ended up with this recipe to get rid of the mud. We just reprocess it back, so this top-up valve is very important. See, first we use the mud, reuse the mud, and then if we, it's not one-to-one recipe, so we need to add a bit more mud from the seabed, viscous mud water. Sorry. Yeah, but basically, you from the heavy mud, you can also make the geodes, and you end up with all 6 of them. I think there are 6 of them. Like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. So with geodes, I used to put them on a belt, but oh well. You can use this system when you don't have the logistics network. You can just make 5 of these. I don't even have 5 inserters, but basically you would insert all the ores and then you would filter them. Like you would let only the filter door through here, like this, output priority. Well, in my case it's left, and you would select whatever geode. So only the blue geodes will end up on this belt, and everything else will go through here. So you just repeat the filtration for the next geode, and the last belt will end up with everything that hasn't been filtered out, which will be the last geode by default. That's how you can use it before the advanced technologies. And then you put them through the crushers and you end up with stone again. And the stone from the ores and stone from here, it was actually a bit maddening how much stone I ended up with. So I tried to get rid of it through mineralized water recipe, and it's quite easy. You can just use water and basically you mix the stone into the water like so through this recipe, you make the mineralized water. And because this process doesn't take too much mineralized water, I store it up, and you know, like I showed you earlier, I pump the excess water when it's more than 18,000. This tank holds 20,000. You can see here in the description. It holds 20,000. Anything above 18, so it doesn't stall the system and, you know, jam it up. I just pump it up. Hopefully these guys get rid of it fast enough. But yeah, I had a whole, you know, all my buffer chests I ended up filling. And this is the, oh, no, wait. Oh, I'm not requesting them? How did I fail that? 9400. This chest can hold 9,600 of item if the item stack is 200. But I leave the last slot open because the stupid bots will bring more than 9,600, and then they will, you know, complain about baggage space. So you gotta leave one slot open for dynamic logistic network shenanigans. But yeah, you end up with more of these chunks than you know what to do with, and you end up with this wood if you go this route. You can either make plastic or just truck it away to your boilers. You end up with this wood brick. Right, so this is how you get rid of the stone from here and from the geodes. The geodes, the crushed crystal you get here, and you make the thing. Yeah, and yeah, that's basically this recipe covered. This system is self-sustaining as long as you get rid of the acid. You could add a storage tank. Oh, if I can find it. On the acid, you know, and then you link a pump to it. You know. Then you could just pump the either this fluid or the acid. I guess fluid directly. The oxide gas. Whichever you choose to monitor. Then you use the flare stack, you know, to pump. With the pump you can just, you know, maybe there's different element, but I try to use as many vanilla approaches as possible. So yeah, you would pump the acid away, and then any excess you would, you know, create a circuit network, read the value, and then get rid of it through the flare stack void. Because I think it has a void. This gas, you can just check real quick. From gases. It's easier to find with the... Yeah, it has a chemical void, this gas, and then... No. Where's the acid? Does the acid have a void? Yeah, it has a void in the flare stack, so it's all good to go. Yeah, so that's how you would control the chunks, but they're quite harmless for the most part. You can just tag them, or you can just, you know, get rid of them in the flare stack, so you don't need to worry about that. But you'll still either pump the mineralized water either into here to get some electricity back, which is quite nice, I think. Or if you don't want to bother, just pump it into the void directly. I think mineralized water has a void. Water, one of these. Mineralized. Yeah, it has a void recipe. So yeah, if you want a void recipe for this one, just follow those simple steps. Use the built-in function for making voids, and yeah. So that's self-sufficient. I'm using 45 logistic bots, and most of the time something like 15 are working or something. At the start they will work more, but now the system has, you know, pretty much produced as many uranium as I needed. And then you just reprocess it. And you then bring it up to here to thorium. This is where I pump them. You end up with the, you know, in making the thorium fuel cell you need lead. The one of the plutonium, no, uranium. I don't know which one it is. The shiny one, basically. You end up with your thorium ore. You know, you reprocess it into the thorium thing, make the cell, you put it in the thorium reactor, you wait for it, then you get this used cell, then you finally you can words are failing me. You can reprocess this fuel cell. It takes as long as this process, and then you can, if you're lucky, you end up with the plutonium, and then you can make this orange looking cell with the thorium thing and the plutonium and some lead. I think it was lead. You can check it under here. Yeah, lead, thorium. So you can get rid of uranium directly if you save up 40 plutonium. You can use this enrichment process. You'll need to use uranium. Oh, I thought you would need to use thorium. Why did I think that? So, wow. But this way you end up with heaps and heaps of thorium. You need to produce it like in very limited amounts. So you can bypass this cell completely. And in a sense, you don't even need to make this thing. Yeah, you can bypass all of this thing completely. You just use uranium in this recipe. Plutonium, there's no real easy way to get it until you can get 40 saved up. But to get the cell, I mean, plutonium, you can only use, you know, used up uranium cell, which is quite unreliable, but this one is more reliable. But yeah. Oh right, I was burning the wrong one. Yeah, I was burning the orange one, the big one. The big one, actually, look at this. It has, compared to the, you know, uranium has 8 gigajoules capacity. This one has 6, but this one has 40. You know, these two yield the same used up cell, which will give you plutonium, but I waited for this cell to run out in the reactor, and it took quite a long time. Yeah, but basically the only way to get the plutonium is by putting some of these cells into the reactors. So just make like, I don't know, 10 reactors just to get enough of these used up cells to reprocess them and hopefully get your plutonium. And once you get 40, you can just make plutonium directly. Yeah, but it turns out you need uranium to make plutonium. Yeah. I thought you would need thorium. You can't bypass the uranium completely. So basically you just repurpose this, I guess. repurpose this one to make the other cell, repurpose this one to make the plutonium enrichment, and then you don't need to, well, don't need to waste the fuel cells just so you can get plutonium, the initial quantities. You can put them in the reactor and finally make your fuel setup from that way. But yeah, if you use the other sources, it gives you a very small amounts of uranium ore. So yeah, I mean, I guess this video has been very long already. Hope you enjoyed it. But basically this system can be made self-sufficient if you get rid of the, well, basically I can show you real quick. Where's the train? Come here to uranium packs. Packs stand for player access. And just these loop stations. Oh, we could have visited this one. Yeah, so I would deliver the wood pellets from here. I can even maybe wood brick here, and it would take the wood bricks to here. I started with the enriched fuel blocks, but in the end with all these efficiency mods in every building, green module 8, you know, you don't end up burning, well, basically you end up with more bricks than you know what to do with. So you might need to just get rid of the mineralized fuel or mineralized water in the void after all. Yeah, and then you get rid of the extra chunks if you don't want them through the flare stack of this sulfide gas. This one. You just put it in the flare stack. Yeah, and then you can make the whole system self-sufficient. Not every element has been balanced out that way. Where is it? Train, come back. We'll see. Maybe. So you end up with more bricks than you know what to do with. Also, this setup creates the bricks because the only way I found to get rid of naphtha without putting it in the void is to make wood. And then from wood, you know the recipes. You make cellulose. This process generates. I get rid of the gas completely straight away. This pipe leads nowhere. Use the gas for this enriched fuel, which is quite direct process. Use the crude oil. Get rid of this one. Get rid of this one like this. Of the solid. And the gas, you could save it. It's quite useful for some of the other recipes, but for here I just get rid of it. Yeah, I just get rid of it, make it into electricity, and this guy I make it into electricity. And I thought it would be my main way to generate electricity, but I ended up with more from algae than I knew what to do with. From the mineralized water, just from these drips, you end up with so much brick. And these guys aren't burning enough because of the green module 8. Yeah. You end up voiding a lot of them instead of making all of this setup. Oh yeah, here just start a system with the coal, no longer required. But yeah, the system is completely self-sufficient, there's no byproducts, no nothing. Nothing can stall your system. Crushed stone. The easiest way to get rid of stone, like very quickly in large quantities, you can make stone into stone. It's buried somewhere, or whatever. Stone under refining. Let's see. See, it's better to memorize where they are in the whole tree instead of always using the search tree. But basically, yeah, you can make stone, and then you can make the landfill, which uses a massive 20 stone, and it's a very quick recipe, so you can very rapidly get rid of all the unnecessary stone to make some landfill. Or just save them for rails, or control the crushed stone any other way. You can make the brick, and then into concrete, and then into reinforced concrete, whatever you need. But it's relatively easy to get rid of stone, but you gotta remember that while you have it in the crushed stone state, it takes up a lot of space. That's all I'm saying. You gotta be mindful of that. It can build up very fast. It can go very fast if you start to process it. But before you have set it up, it can build up really fast and stall the system. Yeah, that about covers it. Thanks for watching.